Well, it's been a long while, but after the thrills and the spills of the FA Cup, we're back to Premiership action with a few midweek games. This is, of course, the Game Week 22 preview here on the Coach's Corner, and as always, you are welcome. Yes, people, once again, welcome to the corner, and the title says it all. It's Game Week 22, and the games are all taking place midweek. That is today, the 30th, tomorrow, the 31st, and the day after tomorrow, the 1st of February. We got two games coming up, and being spread all over those 3 days. I only hope that those teams that play on Thursday will be scheduled to play on Sunday, and that should be the case, and I'm pretty certain it will be, because it's kind of how it works when teams play in Europe, so this midweek should be no different. Of course, it was a strange week for me personally, because Arsenal didn't get to play any games, being knocked out of the FA Cup by Liverpool. And big up to Norwich City, who did what we couldn't do. Scored against them. Twice. And people still think we're going to do really well this season, winning the Champions League and or the Premier League, and Arteta should be given a new contract. Pah! Well, I have to talk about Arsenal because the first of our midweek games sees the Gunners travel to Nottingham to take on the Tree Men, that is Nottingham Forest. Another reunion with former Arsenal goalkeeper Matthew Turner, who has been rather inconsistent this season, it has to be said, proving in some way that maybe we were right to sell him, because I'll tell you what, he didn't really do too much wrong at Arsenal, and I'll always feel as though he was never really given a fair chance to prove himself, especially when Ramsdale was making some horrible mistakes left, right, and centre. But it is what it is. He's, of course, playing first team football, still number one for the USA. Had been displaced, of course, by the Greek goalkeeper Vlachodimos. I hope I pronounced that correctly, but is now back. And Forest are also, unlike Arsenal, still in the FA Cup, having now currently drawn their first leg against Bristol City. So they're going to have to face a replay. And if they win, they'll end up facing Manchester United in the fifth round. Goody. Forest this season have been inconsistent at home and have lost quite a few games. And certainly, with all of the problems surrounding Steve Cooper, they're certainly not as strong as they were at home last season. And this season, of course, they are facing the possibility of a points deduction, which means that they could very well get sucked into a relegation battle. So if I were Gonzalo Montiel or Ibrahim Sangare, I would be thinking, Jesus, I could have stayed at my club and played Champions League football. Now I could be sucked into a relegation battle. I came to England for this. But it is what it is. And of course, Arsenal are coming off a 5-0 spanking of Crystal Palace and have had a break since then. And it will be interesting to see how well they do, because away from home, they have struggled. Certainly, their struggles were evident when they travelled to Craven Cottage to play Fulham. And with three ex-Gunners in that team, Fulham quite simply outplayed us, and they were the deserved winners. So we've got to do it all over again. And this should be, on paper, an easy game for the Arsenal, because Forest really don't offer very much at the moment. I cannot see them doing very much against us. But you just never know with football. However, I am confident enough to predict a 3-1 win for the Gunners. I don't know what others' predictions will be. I have had people telling me that Forest might end up winning, but I'm really, really, really confident that won't happen. However, in the past, I have been burnt with my misplaced confidence in this team. I just hope that it will never happen again. But I know that it will happen. I just hope and pray that it will not happen today, which is when they're playing. The next game, Everton taking a trip to Craven Cottage. A nice chance for Alex Iwobi to prove himself against his former club, having left Everton to go to Fulham earlier on this season. And Fulham obviously will be playing their third consecutive game at Craven Cottage. They drew the second leg of their League Cup semi-final against Everton. They lost in the FA Cup to Newcastle, and now they've got Everton. Everton are nowhere near as good as Liverpool. We can accept that. Everton have been playing a lot better ever since the 10-point deduction. I know Forest fans will be thinking that maybe the prospect of a deduction could see an upturn in their form. I don't know. But in recent times, Everton haven't really looked too good. And of course, like Fulham, they're coming off a rather chastening FA Cup defeat to a last minute winner from Luton Town. So, T Boys TV, if you're watching this, well done to the Hatters. And Fulham should be a much stronger proposition at home. Of course, they beat Arsenal at home. And it just goes to show that beating Fulham at Craven Cottage is not for everyone. And this should be a win for Fulham. I really don't know where Everton will score their goals. But having said that, Everton are going to scrap, they're going to fight, and they will make it hard. I must definitely commend Willian Borges for having found a new lease of life since his return to London, albeit West London. And he certainly looked in really, really good touch. He's been certainly magisterial with his performances for the Cottagers. So I will definitely predict a 2-1 win for Fulham. The toffees are going to go to the cottage and be turned into a bunch of nice sticky toffee puddings. Hanno, I'm not sure if he's had a sticky toffee pudding before. If you haven't, but take my word for it, it is delicious. I was mentioning the Hatters, and they are up next as they entertain Brighton and Hove Albion, who will be coming over to Kenilworth Road. Luton have done quite well this season, considering expectations that they would struggle, and they are still in the relegation zone in the Premiership, but certainly a fine win against Everton in the Cup will certainly do their confidence a world of good, away from home no less. And they're coming up against a Brighton and Hove Albion team that isn't quite as consistent as they were last season, but they always have this habit of being able to somehow find performances when it's least expected of them. And I know that several teams have gone to Kenilworth Road and struggled quite a bit with the surface and the crowd and so forth, but several teams have managed to find a way to win. And of course, Luton will also be entertaining Manchester City in the FA Cup, which will be a real treat. It will be very interesting to see how Pep Guardiola's star-studded bunch will do there. But Brighton and Hove Albion are a much harder working team, and I can definitely predict a comfortable 2-1 win for Brighton. I wouldn't say comfortable in that sense of the word, but T-Boys TV again, I think you lot have done really, really well this season. I'm not being patronising, but I just think that Brighton will certainly have a lot more steel about them, and they certainly wouldn't allow Luton to try to come back hard at them. So 2-1 to the Seagulls as they pick up a few hats from the Hatters. And this one over here sees a couple of really poor teams going up against one another. The only difference between Palace and Sheffield United is that the Londoners, the Eagles, are not in the relegation zone. The Eagles, of course, were thrashed 5-0 at the Emirates, and without Elise in their team, they just look completely toothless. Eberishi Eze did run the midfield show quite well against us, and at times was out muscling Declan Rice off the ball, but there really isn't too much in terms of quality in that Palace team. And I do believe that Dean Henderson will be dropped to make way for the returning Sam Johnston, because conceding 5 goals, certainly some of them the way he did, was not really a good look. And Palace are going to have to do whatever they have to do to make sure they tighten up defensively, because as bad as they are, Sheffield United are really no better, and for want of a nicer word. And this really is going to be a battle between two poor teams, and I just think Palace should be able to escape with a win. I really don't know where Sheffield United's goals are going to come from, and I think they have made a few purchases in the transfer market, including getting the Atletico Madrid goalkeeper Ivo Gerbic on loan, I believe. Why he'd want to go there and compete with Wes Fotheringham and Adam Davies, I'm not too sure, but it's really a desperate ploy. Maybe the hope is that, like Keylor Navas with Nottingham Forest, Gerbic will play a role. I really can't see that happening, to be honest. I just don't think that Sheffield United have anywhere near enough quality in them, and they look doomed and out for the count. So 2-0 to the Eagles. And the final game on Tuesday will see Aston Villa playing Newcastle United. Now, anyone who's seen me on streams with Oris Talks Football and also speaking with Hanno will know that I'm a huge admirer of this Aston Villa team, especially the way they've been playing under Unai Emery this season. And of course, they are still fourth in the Premiership and also competing for the Conference League and still, at least for now, in the FA Cup, having drawn against Hanno's Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, despite for the most part being ripped apart by Chelsea's attacking midfield and Cole Palmer as well. I mean, Gallagher, Madueke, Sterling, and Palmer were literally having a whale of a time against that high line of Aston Villa's. And they forced Emi Martinez into making some excellent saves in the first half. But in the second half, Martinez very nearly gifted them a chance for a goal, only for Cole Palmer to completely fluff his lines. And Villa are going to struggle right now because some of the injuries are taking their toll. Without Luca Digne, Alex Moreno is the only real recognised left back. And if he gets injured, then Villa will be in a huge spot of bother. If I never see John McGinn playing left back for Aston Villa again, it will be too soon. That failed spectacularly against Everton in the League Cup, in case people forget. And I would go on to say as well that unless that bench strength is increased, Villa are really going to struggle because their defence looks absolutely awful. Clement Lenglet should never ever be seen in an Aston Villa shirt again. And when you've got the former Arsenal defender Callum Chambers among your bench strength, it's not really strength at all. It's sort of a misnomer, really. And defense is, of course, an area where they could struggle because, yes, they do have a good low block, but the high line really will be the death of them, especially against teams which are really adept at counter-attacking, as we saw when Villa played Manchester United at Old Trafford. Letting a 2-0 lead slip to lose 3-2 was certainly not one of Unai Emery's finer moments, it has to be said. Villa are still flying high, but up against a Newcastle United team that has shown signs of recovery and who have certainly been playing a lot better than their results would suggest. I'm reminded of the first game week when Villa went to St James's Park and got absolutely creamed 5-1. And of course, the contrast in the team's current positions couldn't be any starker given how they started. I mean, Villa at that time were rock bottom and looking as though they could be in trouble, but then they recovered well with a 4-0 home win over Everton. And since then, they haven't looked back. Still have far and away the best home record in the Premiership this season and a wonderful home unbeaten run. But sadly, I can predict that this will come to an end because Newcastle United are now starting to recover. And as long as they do have Alexander Isak, then that high line of Villas is going to be in for a huge, huge test. And I really don't see them defensively being strong enough to cope with that, I'm afraid. And there will be a lot more dependency on Boubacar Kamara and Douglas Luiz in the centre of the midfield. And against Chelsea in the FA Cup, I have to say that some of their ball play was very sloppy indeed. So Villa, of course, were lucky to escape with a draw and a replay, whereas Newcastle United went to Craven Cottage and won. And I do believe that Newcastle have more than enough about them to get a 2-1 win at Villa Park and end the magnificent home run of Aston Villa. Don't get me wrong, with a former Arsenal coach and 2 ex-Gunners in their team, I am also, in my heart, hoping that Villa have a great season this season. I would love to see them win the Conference League and finish as high as possible in the Premier League. If they can secure Champions League qualification, that would be magnificent. Certainly, the title looks well beyond them. That is Liverpool's and Manchester City's for which to fight. And speaking of Manchester City, they will, of course, be, still on game week 22. They will, of course, be entertaining their former skipper Vincent Kompany and his Burnley team on a Wednesday, and this should be a fairly routine win for City because I really don't see Burnley getting anything from this. And Burnley have also shown a great deal of spirit and fight, and they've shown that they can certainly play. A few poor decisions have gone against them, it must be said. Some luck has not really been on their side, but the Premiership is ruthless, and I certainly don't think that City will be in any mood to offer their former skipper any favours, especially since they are looking to bounce back from a little mini slump and start a run themselves. I think people are jumping the gun when they say that City will still go on to win, because obviously, with Liverpool doing as well as they've been doing, even without Mohamed Salah, who went to the AFCON and is now injured, um, it is going to be a bit of a tough task for City. And certainly, unlike Arsenal, Liverpool don't have that much of a soft centre. And uh, I just think City basically will have a little bit too much to do. And we've seen when they have too much to do, it can be a little bit too daunting for them. If Arsenal had shown a lot more character and a lot more bottle and more concentration and less complacency, City wouldn't be treble winners. It is what it is. But this should be a fairly routine win for Manchester City. I'm confident enough to go for. I don't remember the scoreline I mentioned. I think I might have said 3-1 or something. Because City, I really don't think will keep any clean sheets. But certainly not with Ruben Diaz in the defence and Edison Moraes in goal. I know Edison's a fine shot stopper, but he can certainly be prone to some poor mistakes every now and then. But I think 3-1 would be a more than decent scoreline for them. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 4-1. Now we go to City's bogey team, or should I say bogey team no more, given that Manchester City beat Spurs in the FA Cup to qualify for the fifth round themselves. And Spurs obviously now will have no real trophies for which to play except a possible Premiership. And, the Premiership is ruthless, but this season it has been really wonky in some ways with some strange results. You just never know what can possibly happen. Like Emery, Postecoglou clearly enjoys playing with a very high line, and sometimes it can work really well, but against a Brentford team that has Ivan Toney back and firing on all cylinders, they're going to have to be really careful. And certainly the return of Jimmy Maddison to the Tottenham side will strengthen them in many ways, but with Heung-min Son still in Qatar playing in the Asian Cup, and speaking of which, South Korea will be playing Saudi Arabia on the Wednesday, that is later on tonight, I believe. Uh, it will be interesting to see how Spurs shape up in front, up top, as we would say. Richarlison, Timo Werner, Brennan Johnson as part of that attacking midfield, Dejan Kulusevski. Not too many real options, you see. And there has been talk of Brian Hill being sent away from Spurs on loan to try to get some game time, and Brentford was considered a possible target. But no real development in that as of yet, and I do think that Hill will certainly have a role to play for Spurs later on this season. I remember seeing him play and thinking that he is absolute quality. But injuries, of course, have not been his best friend. And Spurs' defence will be tested. Romero in the centre of the defence could very well prove to be a liability if he doesn't wind his neck in. I mean, for some reason, he performs magnificently for Argentina, but when he puts on that white Spurs jersey, he goes from Superman to stupid man, as I've said on more than a few occasions. But Porro on the left and Udogie on the right and Udogie on the left, and Van der Ven also joining Romero in the centre. On paper, it should be a fairly good, strong back four, but it can be breached, and Brentford might fancy their chances if they can provide Tony some good service. Um, I was actually inclined to go for a 2-2 draw here because I do believe there will be some goals. It will be hard to pick a winner. I think some people have been brave enough to go for a Brentford win. Others have said that Spurs might get it. For me, it's just too close to call, and I will be interested to hear what some of you will have to say. And the big one on Wednesday sees Liverpool facing Chelsea. Hano's team obviously have produced some good performances, and certainly the way they played against Aston Villa in the FA Cup, they've shown that they are capable of performing really well if they have the right combination. But defensively, it is still a little bit patched up. Injuries have affected them. And I think it might be jumping the gun to say that Pochettino has now found his perfect combination, because now they're going to go to the league leaders, and they will definitely be on a huge hiding to nothing. And I cannot look beyond a Liverpool win here because even without Mohamed Salah, Darwin Núñez has started to step up and really take responsibility. And of course, when you've got Diaz and Gakpo with him up front and a midfield as strong as Liverpool's is, of course, they don't have Wataru Endo, but Ali Mac, Alexis McAllister, is, of course, back. And then you can have Gravenberch, Curtis Jones, Szoboszlai. The defence has started to look really good as well. Huge hat tip to Joe Gomez for coming in and proving to be a very, very key player. And if Liverpool do go on to win, he will definitely have earned that winner's medal, deputising in at right back and left back, while the youngster Conor Bradley has also come into the team. And the leadership, of course, shown by both Virgil van Dijk and Ibrahim Konate has been outstanding. And let's also not forget Alisson Becker, who is up there with Emi Martinez, in my opinion, as one of the best goalkeepers in the Premiership and in world football today. Of course, unlike Martinez, Alisson doesn't have a World Cup winners' medal, but then Emi Martinez doesn't have a Champions League winners' medal or a Premiership winners' medal. Put those two together and you'd have quite the trophy cabinet, believe you me. But Liverpool should win this one 3-1. Sorry, Hanno. I hope that Chelsea can, for Hanno's sake and the sake of other friends of mine, put in a more than decent performance. And I'm sure that Pochettino will want to see the team do as well as it can. But this is effectively Jurgen Klopp's farewell tour, and it will be very interesting to see if this will have the desired effect on his players. Certainly, as an Arsenal fan, um, I'm not looking forward to playing them when they come over to the Emirates this coming weekend. Thursday sees West Ham United coming up against Bournemouth. The Hammers, what can you say about them? They've started to get a little bit of consistency, and obviously with the money they received from the Declan Rice sale, they've bought wisely. James Ward-Prowse, Mohamed Kudus, Jared Bowen still with the team and playing really well. And those three people, along with the likes of Paquetá and a few others, have literally been key to West Ham's success this season in the league. And of course, they beat Arsenal at the Emirates in what was a dreadful performance from us. All the chances, and we just couldn't score. And we have some people saying that we deserve to win. Wind your necks in. As far as Bournemouth and Andoni Iraola are concerned, they were on an excellent run of form before entertaining Liverpool at Dean Court, and they got an idea as to why Liverpool are currently deservedly top of the league. They did recover from that, of course, with a fine win over Swansea in the FA Cup, while West Ham had, of course, succumbed to Bristol City, I believe, in the FA Cup. And so Bournemouth have made a bit of a decent recovery. But going all the way to the London Stadium to take on West Ham will be a daunting proposition. And West Ham, of course, are still very much in the Europa League and doing really well there and hoping to try to have a run where they go deep in the competition, as deep as they did last time, maybe even deeper, who knows? Of course, the only way you can go deep is by reaching the final, but that remains to be seen. And this match, of course, should provide some really good football from both teams. Bournemouth, of course, do not have Dunga Atara in their team. He is, of course, away with Burkina Faso at the AFCON, but Mohamed Kudus should be back after Ghana's unceremoniously early exit. And whether or not he comes into the team straight away, I don't know, but he should make the squad. And I can definitely see this one being a 2-1 West Ham win. So the Hammers will pretty much smash the Cherries, I'm afraid. And the final game of the midweek fixtures sees Wolverhampton Wanderers entertaining Manchester United. Now, the reverse fixture earlier on was filled with more than a bit of controversy, with a lot of people claiming that Wolves should have had a penalty for a foul by Andre Onana on one of their attackers. And Gary O'Neill's team have certainly played some really good football this season, and they've certainly proven that at Molineux they are a very, very tough proposition indeed, having, of course, beaten Manchester City there while drawing against the likes of Aston Villa and others. Manchester United, of course, are coming off a fortunate win, for want of a better word, against Newport in the FA Cup. They were pegged back to 2-2, but eventually their experience shone through as they won 4-2. And Wolves, of course, came through a huge battle against West Bromwich Albion, the Midlands derby, of course, was interrupted by some disgraceful fan behaviour in the stands, and it had to be delayed for the best part of a half hour before eventually order was restored and Wolverhampton completed the formalities with a 2-0 win. And so there is a part of me that definitely believes that with Manchester United starting to at least get a few wins, they will certainly be a tough proposition, and they should go to Molineux and get a win, especially given that Wolves are still going to be without Hee Chan Hwang, who, like Heung-min Son, is with South Korea in the Asian Cup. But Wolves obviously do have Ryan Ait-Nouri back in their team after he finished his stint at the AFCON. Wasn't exactly the best stint for him and his nation, but it is what it is. And Wolves are going to really prove their quality in many ways, but I just believe that Manchester United will have a bit too much for them. However, I do know a few Manchester United fans, and they know who they are, who are predicting that given United's unconvincing performances as of late, they will still be expected to struggle, and this one could very well prove to be a bit of a bridge too far for them. Or maybe not so much a bridge too far. Of course, if United could contrive to lose 3-0 at home to Gary O'Neill's former side, Bournemouth, it just sums up how really poor and inconsistent their season has been by their normally high standards, especially given how well they did last season, securing third place in the league and winning the League Cup. But just goes to show that maybe winning the League Cup could prove to be a bit of a false dawn. And there are, of course, a lot of issues with the squad, a lot of unrest. The Rashford issue, like the Sancho issue, could very well prove to destabilize the squad unless it is dealt with in the best possible manner. Updates indicate that Rashford has taken responsibility for his behavior, but we're going to see how that one plays out, and it could very well be that United will end up having another issue of a player falling on the wrong side of club policy and then being frozen out. So these are your 10 midweek fixtures for this week, and I hope that you will enjoy them. This stream is, of course, being recorded and it will be shown to you live. And it should be, of course, shown in time just before the games start later on a Tuesday. So I just want to say thank you very much indeed for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy these games. Thanks very much indeed to Hanno for allowing me to record this for you. And hopefully it went a lot better, because whenever you've heard me speak live, I've had a tendency to stammer a lot more than I have now. And I just hope that you've enjoyed this recording. It's been a bit of a challenge, and I think something which I'm looking forward to trying to do again and again and again. But anyway, once again, thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the games, and I hope to see you again very soon on the channel. As always, take care of yourselves, stay safe, stay happy, and don't do anything that Hanno and I wouldn't do. But as always, it is farewell to thee, and goodbye, and God bless to each and every one of you. Cheers.